Hey, Love Your Life family, welcome back to another Loving Your Life discussion. It is your sis Crystal, and we are so excited to have Dr. Carlie with us today. Come welcome her with me today. Incredible woman that I have had the pleasure of getting to know. How are you doing this morning?
Absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited to be here with you this morning, and I just want to thank you for inviting me onto your platform. And I can't wait to have our discussion this morning.
That is incredible. So tell us where you are at. Where are you from?
I am in Houston, Texas.
Ooh, good old Houston. How are things right now in Houston? I know we're in the midst of COVID and stuff going on. What's going on in your city?
COVID is on the rise. Things are pretty bad regarding COVID
Okay.
in the city. Actually, just lost a cousin last week to COVID pretty quickly after 10 days
Man.
of being diagnosed positive. And so things are, things are pretty bad in the city. So when when we have to go out, we put on our mask,
Okay.
and just stay prayed up.
Most definitely. Man, that's a lot, to take on when it hits close to home. So
Mhm.
definitely be praying for you and your family during this time. It's no discriminator. We are clearly seeing, so
Absolutely.
like you said, mask up, take care of your health. And we
Yep.
are going to talk about some different things today, which I'm excited about, of continuing to have health awareness, and different things and
Absolutely.
different options that are available to us. So are you married, a mommy? What does that life look like for you?
Yes, and yes. So I am married. We have one son. He's 9 years old.
Man.
We live here in Houston, about 10 miles south of downtown in a suburb called Pearland. I'm a naturopathic physician, and
Okay.
I've been licensed for about 12 years now, and also an entrepreneur. And
Wow.
so I started my company, Monaco Natural Health Solutions, in July of 2018. And then we launched the brand Dr. Carlie in January of 2020. And so there's many hats that I wear. I'm also an educator. I educate people in cannabis, also in natural health care. I've been an adult educator for probably the past 15 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
I really enjoy that. So I wear many hats and I love each one of them.
That is awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So tell me, when did you know you wanted to become a doctor?
Well, since I was a child, that was always the profession that I wanted. I
Mhm.
always wanted to be a doctor. For Christmas, I would ask my parents for anatomy books.
Oh, wow.
I was that I was that kid. But as I got older, and I would go to the doctor,
Mhm.
say, this isn't really what I want to do. Like, I want to heal people, I want to help people, but when I would go to the doctor, spend that 15 minutes, they write a script. I said, this isn't really what I want to do. So I started looking into herbal medicine, and
Okay.
I discovered naturopathic medicine. I went out to Arizona, Tempe, to SCNM, Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, and did a student for a
Okay.
day program. And that was an amazing experience. They actually even took on a case of mine on a homeopathy shift while I was visiting, healed an ear problem that I had been having for the past 10 years
Oh,
with
wow.
one dose of homeopathy. And I was sold. I was like, if I can be a doctor who can create these type of amazing results for my patients, this is what I want to do. And so that's what led me down the road to becoming a naturopathic doctor.
Man, are you still loving it?
I'm still loving it. Yes, the best decision I ever made. Well, one
That
of
is
them.
that's incredible. So tell me, what was the hardest part of your journey in becoming a doctor as a Black woman? And what tools did you use to stay focused?
Well, I would say some of the treatment that I received while I was in school, um, and some of the other African American students could probably attest to the same treatment. Just being written a little harder than some of the other students, being treated maybe in a disrespectful way by some of the instructors. For example, I remember I was on one shift and we were working with the homeless population,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the only Black student on the shift. And night after night, I would always get the latest patients because it was a night shift. I would get the sickest patients, which is okay. It was good for my learning.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the moment and you see that you're constantly being given kind of the most difficult situations, it it was kind of disheartening, you know.
Yeah.
And so I would just say the biggest obstacles regarding race were just kind of getting through the kind of the treatment that wasn't necessarily equal. I remember even being on a homeopathy shift, and there was a Black young man. We were only two Blacks on the shift. There's probably
Uh-huh.
10 other Caucasian students, maybe one Asian. And he had, when we do the homeopathy shift, there's a long write up that we do about the patient. And they just ripped his write up to shreds. I mean, like I had never seen before. Just
Oh, wow.
completely humiliated him to the point where the professor at the end of it all was like, "Well, do you want to go home now?" And the student said, "Yeah, I'm going to leave." I mean, it was bad. And never had seen a student on a homeopathy shift treated in that way. And definitely, and he was actually Afro-Caribbean. And so, you know,
Yeah.
those were kind of the obstacles, but, you know, we made it through.
Mm-hmm.
And we became, you know, successful physicians. And so, you know, those experiences really just kind of go into just making you a stronger person, really just helping you become more culturally aware.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when you come up against people who may have similar viewpoints to those who mistreated you before, you're more prepared
Mm-hmm.
in how to deal with those situations. Another example, last one I'll give you, I was on an acupuncture shift, and there was a Caucasian patient who had come in, and I was a student, of course, at the time. And Dr. Dang, who was our professor for the acupuncture courses, had did an initial interview with her, and then he had selected me to insert the needles. And so when I went into the room, she just had this grimace, just, you're gonna be the one, you're gonna do the acupuncture? And I said, yes, I am. And she was just so disappointed. And I don't know if it's because I wasn't Asian, you know, or I was
Mm-hmm.
young, you know, I don't know exactly, but I'm quite sure that race had quite a bit to do with her response. And so, you know, there's a lot of moments where, you know, if you don't know who you are and you don't have that confidence within yourself that people, patients, and supervising physicians, et cetera, can really snatch that from you
Right.
if you aren't grounded in who you are.
Yeah, definitely. So for you, during that time, what tools would you say, like, where did you go in that place mentally? What really anchored you to stay focused? What tools did you utilize for yourself to keep pressing through? Because one thing that you mentioned was, how it prepared you. You know, there are a lot of things that were hard that you had to confront later on in life, but that those rough moments kind of, prepared you for, really being on the other side of implicit biases. And so for you also, just kind of in the thick of that and knowing your childhood desire to be a doctor, and then you're contending, just
Right.
because of how God created you. So where did you go mentally to stay focused? What really anchored you?
Well, one thing that I really utilized as a student to help me stay focused and centered was, well, one, it was the motivation. I've always been very highly motivated. And
Okay.
so just the motivation to finish, to not be discouraged. But I also use meditation,
Okay.
you know, as a tool. I use meditation in order to help just kind of clear my mind, stay focused, and really get centered and remembering who I was,
Okay.
remembering that my ancestors died so that I could be in a position to where
Mhm.
I can study to be a physician. And so even though there may be people who are throwing hurdles, or creating obstacles or would like to create obstacles, it's like I'm going to stay focused and centered and so that I know how to, kind of duck and dodge and jump, over these hurdles because I'm still going to make it to the finish line. And meditation was definitely one of those things that helped me out tremendously, and even acupuncture, I would say. I
Okay.
used to go into the clinic and get acupuncture. Acupuncture can be used for so many different ailments, and especially for someone who may be going through things emotionally. And people don't tend to think about acupuncture for
Mhm.
emotional or mental health, but it's
Mhm.
extremely helpful. There's actually a point right under the belly button that's called the Sea of Chi. And
Okay.
when you needle that point, it's very emotionally stimulating. And there's been many times where when that point has been needled, tears just begin to fall. And it's like an emotional release. And
Wow.
so I would utilize meditation, I would utilize acupuncture. And then also, I was a part of a minority group within the naturopathic community, the Imhotep circle. Imhotep was the first physician in Egypt, and
Oh wow.
the first physician on record, and he was Egyptian, I should say. And yes, I mean, if you've never studied Imhotep, I highly recommend reading about him. Just a very remarkable person,
Mhm.
and wrote many scrolls about various diseases and treatments, surgical treatments even that they were doing back then. And so we, in the part of that Imhotep circle, our focus was community service, but just coming together and talking with one another, having a supportive community, because
Mhm.
we would have similar experiences in school. And so just having a support group, someone that had similar experiences to you, where you could talk to, be encouraged, share what you were going through. That was very helpful as well.
That is awesome. It's, because we just live in a time where I think a lot of times people, because a challenge comes at, there's the assumption, well, maybe this isn't for me,
Mm-hmm.
versus um, pivoting
Mm-hmm.
and, continuing to, my husband, I love when he breaks it down, but really the importance of having that mentality. Okay, it's time to pivot, but you have your goal, you still attack it, but know that when circumstances arise or when challenges come, that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily for you. You just may have to pivot, and
Mm-hmm.
pivot mentally first,
Yep.
because that's crucial, how you see the situation.
Yes.
But that, it's incredible that you stuck to your childhood dream and desire, and just being self-motivated. That's incredible. And so, for a lot of people coming up now that have these desires, and knowing that challenges are necessary,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're optimistic about it, it's like, look, it's going to make you better. It's not always fair what you're going through, but that's life. There's a lot of things that occur, and it's like you can get stuck in the why me,
Mm-hmm.
or pivot, and then you had community around you, different people to converse with, so that you weren't containing the frustration.
Mm-hmm.
You had an outlet.
Yes.
So I hear a lot of balance, taking different approaches for your own mental health,
Mm-hmm.
physical health, to continue to pursue your goals and desires. And so that's incredible, absolutely incredible, man. So what are you most passionate about in your field of work? I mean, because there's so many things that you could focus on, and all kind of clients that are coming to you for different ailments, but is there 2 to 3 areas that is just your passion to truly educate about?
Yes, absolutely. So I love botanical medicine. I love plant-based medicine. And also cannabis.
All right.
Cannabis, well, obviously, is a plant. And that is my favorite plant because it has so many different medicinal properties.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been, especially with the climate right now, you know, really pre-COVID, you were hearing a lot about, legalization of cannabis, and, it's kind of taken a little bit of a back burner. You don't hear as much about it, but in the cannabis community, we're still very active in advocating and educating. And so I actually started educating about the cannabis plant when I was invited to the Houston Academy of Cannabis Science. They invited me to come and teach a course about the endocannabinoid system. And I said,
Okay.
well, I know I'm familiar, this sounds interesting, but I never taught a cannabis course. And so I went in, taught the course. Honey, it was the most fun, exciting, engaging course that I had ever taught. And from there, I started to get invited to speak at different hemp conventions and cannabis conferences. And it's just kind of snowballed into, I've created a cannabis online course
Wow.
and developed a CBD line. And, it's interesting, it all started from being invited to come and teach a class at the Cannabis Academy. And from there, I become kind of a leading voice, if you will, not to toot my own horn, but, in
No.
the industry.
Uh-huh.
And so it's something I'm very passionate about because it's something that is so effective for so many different health conditions. And I believe that all people should have access. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe in legalization because when you have legalization, you have regulation. A lot of people are self-medicating,
Mm-hmm.
and when you go and buy marijuana off of the street, there could be strains that can make what you're trying to self-medicate for worse. But if you can walk into a
Wow.
dispensary where you have a knowledgeable staff, or you can say, hey, I have anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
they will know the strains that are going to be helpful for that, because some strains of cannabis can make anxiety worse and some make it a lot better. And so that is the main reason that I advocate for legalization, so that people
Mm-hmm.
can get the proper strains for exactly what it is that they're wanting to treat. Also for research purposes, because with cannabis being on a Schedule 1, it's very difficult for universities to get funding for research around it, and even to get their hands on the plant to be able to do the research. And so a lot of the research that we have, there's tons of research on cannabis. Most of it comes from other countries. A lot comes out of Israel, but a lot of it comes from other countries. And we are really behind the curve. And
Wow.
it's interesting because cannabis was actually one of the top 5 prescribed medications before the Marijuana Tax Act that passed in 1937, which criminalized marijuana, which included hemp as well. And so, but before that, doctors would regularly prescribe marijuana for pain, for anxiety, for depression, um, for glaucoma, for so many different ailments. And once
Yeah.
that act passed in 1937, they were no longer able to do so. And also that act no longer allowed research. And so we're just now trying to catch up, right? And I believe it really set us back. It's been, a little less than 100 years, but I think it set us back centuries because, of the lack of availability and research. And there's so many patients that could have been benefiting over these years. For example, our epileptic patients
Mm-hmm.
that haven't had access. And it's just really unfair, it's a natural herbal remedy. And there was a lot of propaganda. And actually, if you go back and you look at, I believe there's a documentary, it's called The Grass is Greener. And
Uh-huh.
it explains how marijuana was criminalized really to put more minorities in prison. That was the motivation behind it. And so it's really unfortunate that when you have this kind of, you've taken away this wonderfully beneficial plant, but then you've also criminalized it, putting people in prison, um, you know, who are trying to sell the plant, etc. it's just really been a disservice to our community. You know, hemp itself, because when you talk about cannabis, you have both hemp and marijuana. The big difference is marijuana produces more THC, whereas hemp produces more CBD. But you have all of the cannabinoids in each of the plants. Hemp used to actually be mandated by the government to be grown by the colonies, because hemp can be used to make really over 25,000 different products. Everything from textiles, clothing, bricks, you can make cars, fuel, food, for livestock and people. There's so many different uses. It's a very valuable plant. And so when we used to actually be able to pay our taxes in hemp in this country. This how valuable this plant is. And so I'm just excited coming back, making a resurgence. We have a lot of miseducation to undo, because there was a lot of propaganda that was put around the plant to make people believe that it was evil. They would make movies of people smoking marijuana and then going out and raping people, just really trying to, put in people's minds that this was something that was unhealthy and unsafe, and that could not be further from the truth. And so I'm enjoying being a part of re-educating people about what the plant really is.
That was something I really want to hear you unpack, because like you said, there's so many stigmas, really, really bad negative stigmas when it comes to marijuana. I grew up shaped by them, grew up all around it. But it was either, like you said, associated with criminality. You from the hood if you smoke. You're low life. You're oh gosh, just a stoner. All of the negative words that were associated with it. That you're the one that's dropping out of high school. And is that the case for some? Yeah. I got to bring some truth to that, but that's not the only reason kids dropped out of high school, and so growing up, I don't know, like I tried to stay away from it when I could, which wasn't easy, and then all of a sudden, as I became like a young adult, I started dealing with chronic illness. And I remember, just because of what shaped me and how I saw marijuana when it was suggested, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And so, and I'll kind of unpack that a little bit more later, but can you unpack that a little bit more, just the stigmas around marijuana? I know you touched on the committing crimes afterwards, and just the different associations, but how that has affected people not choosing to have that on the table as an option for healthcare, pain relief, all the different things. And with that, can you really unpack our own built-in cannabinoid system and why cannabis is crucial and is very essential for the health?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the stigmas that were created around it were extremely detrimental, because with it becoming a Schedule I and becoming illegal, it's not taught in medical schools. That's the biggest disservice. So many physicians, unless they've gone out and done their own research, do not know about the endocannabinoid system, which is just really unbelievable. And so we have a lack of education around what it really is, the system that we have in our body. And with physicians not understanding, and we're trying to say this plant is medicine, and they've not been taught about it, and they grew up with the same stigmas, right? And there's still that stigma around it. And so a lot of physicians just kind of, are not comfortable, even though their patients are coming in and asking them, hey, I read this article, cannabis can be helpful for this. They don't know anything about it. And because they are not educated in it, they're not going to be comfortable discussing it with patients. And so the stigma kind of continues when your own doctor can't endorse it.
Right.
And I believe that when physicians are educated in it, they absolutely 100% will endorse it if you're really focused on wellness and helping the patient to heal.
Uh-huh.
Because the endocannabinoid system, let me just explain just how significant. In our brains, we have more receptors for our endogenous cannabinoids. We have more receptors for cannabinoids in our brain than we have for all the other neurotransmitters combined. And so the system is responsible for creating homeostasis, which is balance in the body, and it regulates a lot of the other body systems. So when you have a system that is helping to control other body systems, we need to be educated in this as physicians.
Absolutely.
And so the endocannabinoid system, it's a network of neurotransmitters. We have our endogenous endocannabinoids, which are called anandamide and 2-AG. We also have receptors, CB1 and CB2. CB1 is located primarily in the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. And CB2 is located primarily in the peripheral nervous system, but we also have receptors for them in the gastrointestinal tract, in the skin, in the lungs, just all over the body, reproductive organs. And so what we see, for example, when people have low levels of anandamide, well, first, before I go there, so when you bring in something like cannabis, so cannabis actually interacts with our endocannabinoid system. We have a whole body system that is made to interact with this plant.
Okay.
And so that alone should be proof enough, right, that we should be ingesting this plant, or at least our body is made to ingest the plant.
Okay.
THC specifically is a phytocannabinoid. Phyto just meaning plant. So the phytocannabinoids are made by the plant. The endocannabinoids are made by our own body.
Okay.
And THC is a phytocannabinoid that sits on the CB1 receptors. And CBD actually is really interesting. It's also a phytocannabinoid, but it doesn't sit inside the receptor. You know, the receptor is like a lock, and the phytocannabinoid or the endocannabinoid is like a key that sits inside of the lock. And when you put the key inside the lock, certain things begin to happen in the body. And so what happens with CBD is CBD actually, it doesn't sit in the lock, but it helps by slowing down or inhibiting an enzyme that would break down our natural endocannabinoids. So when we are preventing the breakdown of our own endocannabinoids, they hang around longer. Ananda is Sanskrit for joy or bliss because of the positive feelings that it creates in the body. And for example, people that have low levels of anandamide suffer from conditions such as PTSD, depression, anxiety. And also what they have seen is that people that have PTSD not only have lower levels of anandamide, but their brains also have increased numbers of the CB1 receptor, because the brain is creating more CB1 receptors to try to utilize all of the anandamide possible.
Man.
And so when we introduce something like a phytocannabinoid, right, that can help to basically take the place of that anandamide that's missing, we start to see improvement in anxiety in that PTSD patient, or just an anxiety patient in general. We see decreased levels of depression, and we just see elevated mood in general. If you look up, there's also a group, Doctors for Medical Marijuana. And there's an article that I was reading about actually Crohn's disease and just irritable bowel disease in general. And a lot of irritable bowel disease patients have been using, I believe it was over 60%, use cannabis. And we know a lot of them probably illegally because you don't have access everywhere, right? And this is part of the reason I advocate for legalization, because it is very effective for their symptoms. They even seen some patients that have a complete remission of symptoms by using cannabis. And so because it activates the CB2 receptor in the gut lining, which helps to heal the gut mucosa and the gut lining. And so there's and we can even get into COVID, right? They're doing a lot of research. There's a company up in Canada who's doing research at the university regarding COVID and cannabis, because one of the things that CBD does, CBD is very anti-inflammatory, and that's primarily because it decreases our inflammatory cytokines. And when in COVID patients, the cytokines, or we call it a cytokine storm, right, where they are just overproduced and they are causing this issue in the lung where it's difficult to breathe. And so we have a substance like cannabis that can reduce the production of cytokines. It can help prevent the cytokine storm. And they're also looking at it and just generally being able to not only help people who are already infected with COVID, but those helping people to protect against becoming infected, because it has an effect on the ACE receptors within the lung. And so when you look at a Schedule 1 drug, Schedule 1 means it has no medicinal value, and the drug is also highly addictive. We know that neither one of those things is true regarding cannabis. And so we need that removed from Schedule 1 so that we can really just open up the doors for more research, and so that we can start giving more patients access. And it's also neuromodulatory. So when you look at conditions like epilepsy, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, there are tons of studies that show how it is beneficial at helping to decrease the symptoms. Tremors, shakes, memory, all of these things are improved with the use of cannabis. Where, we were taught, it fries your brain, right? But cannabis is actually very neuroprotective, and it also helps to promote neurogenesis, which is the production of new neurons or nerve cells. And so there's a lot there, and it's just, I just feel like whatever that hurdle is that is keeping us from getting this off of Schedule 1, I think that it's crumbling, it's coming to an end. I think that there's still just a lot of people, a lot of stigmas out there, and it's just really miseducation. When people really understand how powerful the plant is. I didn't even mention pain, the chronic pain patients, the opioid epidemic. We actually see, when you look at statistics in states that have medical legalization of marijuana, you see immediately a decrease in opioid sales, a decrease in opioid use, a decrease in opioid overdoses. And those numbers continue to improve the more years that state has had legalized marijuana, because you don't have any significant side effects from this plant. That's the other beautiful thing, right? And so, when you have something that can take a patient from having 300 seizures a week to having 1 seizure a week, I don't feel it should only be available for irretractable epilepsy, but for all epileptic patients, right? Just because you're not having 500 seizures, maybe you're having 5, that is still could mean the world to that patient to go from 5 to 0, So, there's, when you look at nausea and vomiting, extremely effective for nausea and vomiting, more effective than any pharmaceutical drug out there. And so with really no side effect. I mean, you have some short-term memory loss, that kind of where did I put my keys type of thing, which when you look at the side effects.
I was gonna say, shoot, that happens just when you don't get enough sleep.
Exactly. There's dry mouth. That's another, side effect. I mean, but these things are so minimal compared to the benefit you know,
Yeah.
and I do think there's going to be a lot of pushback from big pharma. You know, I'm not anti-big pharma. We need pharmaceuticals for various things. We
Mm-hmm.
just don't need pharmaceuticals for everything they're being used for. You
Right,
know,
right.
there's room for other things that are more natural, that are more effective. And so I think, you know, there's, you know, for example, the opioids, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really think cannabis could really just kind of, I mean, oh, we need that for people maybe who are in hospice, end of life, you know, those type of things. I'm not saying we don't need opioids, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely for people who are just in chronic pain, cannabis is extremely effective. And there's never been one death associated with cannabis, not one ever. And
Wow.
so, you know, when you have something like that, and then you have this other drug that's killing, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people every year,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it makes you kind of like, what are we doing? You
Mm-hmm.
know, what is the real motivation here? And I think, you know, understanding, because they say, you know, wow, cannabis is going to become this multi-billion-dollar industry here coming up within the next few years. I really think that is going to be one of the motivating factors to help move this off of Schedule 1, because a lot of things in this country are motivated and moved by financial gain motivation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, hey, if that's what it takes, you know, if the powers that be are motivated by the potential, you know, monetary benefit in order for us to be able to have access, you know, so be it. But whatever it is, we need to kind of move in that direction, because there are so many patients that could benefit, and people are self-medicating. You know, a lot of people
Right.
feel like, you know, people are just getting high. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who are getting high, they're self-treating depression. They're self-treating anxiety,
Right.
right? And they're self-treating pain, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so there's those self-treating insomnia. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm not saying there aren't people who just want to get high. Of course,
Right.
there's always going to be people who want to get high.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, it just makes them feel better,
Yeah.
you know. And so, so yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I'm just excited that, you know, this is, our society is beginning to have a more open mind around the plant.
You know, you've unpacked a lot. I have like 50 questions in my head. I want to just unpack different pieces. But one question I have for you is, with the THC and the cannabis, do they work together? Are they more effective together? How much THC is needed with cannabis to make, because I know the whole flower is a significant part, but it doesn't work better a separate or together? If you can break down that for us.
Sure. So we have the big umbrella is cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Under cannabis, you have hemp and you have marijuana. Okay. Both hemp and marijuana both have THC. It's just hemp has lower levels of THC and marijuana has higher levels of THC. But they both have all of the cannabinoids. So THC is a cannabinoid, CBD is a cannabinoid, but there's 113 cannabinoids that are known.
Did you say 113?
113, yes. So
Wow.
THC and CBD are just two of them. And these are the two that we have the most research on. There's also
Okay.
CBC, there's CBG, there's CBN, there's tons, okay? And so when we know the most about THC and CBD.
Okay.
Now, in order for us to be able to utilize CBD oil or hemp oil, it has to have less than 0.3% THC in order for it to be legal, because THC is the one that produces the high.
Okay.
CBD is anti-inflammatory, but it does not produce a high. THC, it does produce a high, but it's also anti-inflammatory. It's also helpful for, we see that it helps with apoptosis in cancer cells, or helps to decrease cancer cells, or kill cancer cells, I should say.
Okay.
It does a lot of, as antibacterial. So it's not just this thing that produces a high. it has medicinal benefit as well. And so I advocate whole plant use, because what happens when you start to take out constituents of the plant where you're just THC, or you have really high level of THC, or you just take out CBD, you don't see the complete therapeutic effect.
Okay.
As if they were all utilized together. So for example, with the CBD oils that are sold, there's 3 different types. You have an isolate, which is CBD only.
Mm-hmm.
You have broad spectrum, which is all of the cannabinoids that were present in the hemp plant minus THC. And then you have full spectrum, which has all of the cannabinoids present in the plant, including THC.
Okay.
And so my brand, I sell full spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it has to have less than 0.3% THC to legally be sold. So it does not produce a high. When you use an isolate of CBD, studies are showing that you have to use a very, very high amount of isolate to be effective. So when there's one FDA approved drug that uses CBD, it's called Epidiolex. It's the drug that they use for irretractable epilepsy.
Okay.
And when they were doing the study, they showed that for CBD to be effective, which is very effective, right, for irretractable epilepsy, but at least 350 milligrams or more, which is a very high dose of CBD.
Mm-hmm.
However, what we see empirically when you have broad spectrum or full spectrum, the other cannabinoids present, you don't need nearly as much, right? You can have a benefit at 5 milligrams, right? Because the plant is working synergistically. Also, CBD helps to negate the effects of THC. So that high that's produced by the THC is kind of balanced by the CBD. So when you take these tinctures that have like 90% THC in them, you know, this can create just an extreme high that's really unbalanced and not necessarily intended the way that the plant was intended to be used. Now, for some people who are in extreme pain, for like some cancer patients or trigeminal neuralgia patients, because THC is very helpful for pain as well, we may need to see those types of numbers, right? But for the average person, those numbers will be extremely high. And so the plants are made to be used in a whole way. And again, when you start pulling things out, you don't see as much benefit therapeutically as you see when you use the whole plant together.
Man, this is I'm still kind of stuck on the 113 different cannabinoids that are in this one plant, but it makes sense.
Discovered, because there's probably more. Those are just the ones that we have discovered so far.
Man, you know, I just still struggle to wrap my mind around the amount of research that's been done, the thousands, if not millions, of success stories around it. People will pay for it, clearly. So it's not as if big pharma, let's say, was, you know, speaking negative of it because they can't make any money off of it. I mean, you dispel that because it's already a $1 billion industry. And so can you educate me, our audience, on why it's such an issue when we've seen the research? You gave the statistics on the states where it's legalized. There's a decrease in opioid, a decrease in crime. So it's not like they don't have the evidence that it's working for people, especially for such as epilepsy, Alzheimer's, major issues, and the amount of families that are suffering. And going through all these different trials. And like you said, I'm not knocking everything in the pharmaceutical industry, because there's a time and a place for everything. You know, if you have a heart transplant, you're going to need some anti-rejection medication, you know. So there's major issues where, you know, the medication is necessary. But the system is so out of balance. And looking at how highly addictive opioids are, and the amount of families that have suffered at the loss of somebody that truly could have benefited from the cannabis to help with depression, anxiety, because our bodies are designed to ingest it and to help continue to be a medicinal property for us. And so when you look at all of the evidence, you see all of the benefits, health number one, and then financially, because that's just the way the world is, money, the economy. And so I don't want to minimize that. That is a major issue. So it's not like people won't pay for it. So
Right.
what is that where it's just been utilized as stay away, it's it's not good for you, or there's not enough evidence. It's like, come on, man. There's so many people that are benefiting from it that have suffered. When we think about our soldiers that have come back and the amount of suffering that they've had to go through, and the families that have lost these vets due to severe mental health conditions, taking their lives, not coming back the same because the amount of trauma that they've endured. And then you have clear-cut evidence of our own internal system that is wired to receive this plant, to heal, to bring balance, to get us back to a homeostasis so that people can go on with their lives and have effective and productive lives without being mastered by the trauma they've been through. And so when I say that out loud, it just baffles me that there is a fight to legalize this here in America. So on your end as a physician, I'm sure you've raised the same questions, but what would your answer be to that? Like the why behind it? When they see that if it was a money issue, it's clearly a lucrative business.
Absolutely. Extremely lucrative. I wish I 100% had the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
My best hypothesis, I guess, if you will, is I believe the stigma still has a significant impact
Mm-hmm.
on especially the older population
Okay.
who really grew up in that era, between the 1940s and the 1980s, where there was this, the war on drugs, the just say no. I actually was just watching a video on, there's a doctor, I forget his name. He's a neuroscientist.
Mm-hmm.
And he was being interviewed, I believe by Jay Shetty. And he asked him, is marijuana bad? And as a neuroscientist, he literally sat there and said, yes, cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, all of these drugs are bad for your brain. And the fact that he put meth and cannabis just in the same category was just really baffling to me. And I think that even though that there's evidence, he said, I've seen a study, I looked at 1,000 brains of people who smoke marijuana and their brains were not good. And I'm like, I've seen tons of studies, even studies where, pregnant moms have used marijuana. They see no difference in intelligence or brain capacity in the infants. I think that, and it's like, what were the controls in that study?
Mm-hmm.
Because 1,000 people who use marijuana, that can't be the only factor that's affecting their brain. What are we really looking at? And I just felt in so many different levels because that his statements were flawed. He even mentioned, I don't get into politics, and we have Democrats that are trying to legalize this plant. He said, I drove past 5 dispensaries on my way here. I know people from, surgeons to, various other professions who use marijuana regularly. And you can't tell me that, and I've seen, people who are very highly intelligent, who are, like I said, physicians, surgeons, who use the plant regularly, their brains are not damaged. They would not be able to perform those type of highly skilled tasks. And so I just think that, that whole stigma is really the biggest hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, when you have a stigma that has a stronger influence than actual science, that's a problem. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of education and why I'm educating people, because, you know, even myself, when I tell people, for example, I was talking to this young man at a party, I said, yeah, I sell CBD. He goes, oh, I've never smoked weed in my life. And I had to go into the conversation with him about, you know, this is not about smoking weed. You know, explain the endocannabinoid system. I actually just did a podcast with a law group that focuses on the cannabis industry.
Okay.
And the attorney went to his doctor, and he said his doctor told him, yeah, you know, Bob, I hear that I know what you're doing. You know, I just think I don't agree with it. You know, I just don't believe, you know, don't know why you'd be advocating for use of marijuana. And he told his doctor, well, you know, well, what about the endocannabinoid system? And his doctor was like, what? The what? You know, and I explained to him, I said, yeah, people in the industry, even who are non-medical, really know more about the system than even maybe your own primary care physician may know. Man. You know, so I think there's just a vast lack of knowledge. There's still the stigma. And even though the research is there, you know, and it's very easily accessible. My favorite source is NIH.gov. It's the National Institutes of Health. And you just type in cannabis and you are going to find so many studies on so many different ailments, conditions, even as you mentioned, transplant rejection. There is a study that shows how cannabis can help decrease transplant rejection from people that have received organ donation. So I was kind of excited when you said that. Yep, absolutely. It's one of the studies that I present when I go and present at conferences. I present that study on the organ transplant rejection, and how cannabis actually helps decrease that risk.
Man,
it's because of that that cytokine and decreasing the inflammation and decreasing the immune response to the new tissues in the body. And so I also think that there are going to be a lot of, I believe, pharmaceuticals that have been created that will be no longer needed once we're actually again. So I believe there'll be a lot of medications no longer needed. Yeah. Medications that have been created for pain, medications that have been created for nausea, medications that have been created for arthritis, autoimmune disease, irritable bowel disease. I think that it's really going to upend the pharmaceutical industry. Anxiety, antidepressant medications that are just absolutely horrible side effects. I mean, when you have suicidal thoughts as a side effect of an antidepressant medication, right? You know, how, you know, where does that, you know, and the thing about antidepressants, they perform about as beneficial as placebo. When you look at the clinical studies, trials for antidepressants, they're just as effective as placebo, which essentially means they're not effective. You know, and I just, you know, when I think we'll see those anxiety and antidepressant medications kind of going away as well. Actually, exercise has been determined to be more beneficial for depression than antidepressant medications. Wow. And there's a movement within the psychiatric community to start making it a mandated prescription, you know, of exercise before giving antidepressant med, because it's that effective. And, you know, anandamide, our endocannabinoid anandamide, when we exercise, is released in very high levels. It's responsible for what we call that runner's high. Wow. You know, that's anandamide. Man. And so it's just, and I think that's a big part of it too. I think a lot of the industry knows it's going to be upended. I also think physicians are kind of because they haven't been taught.
Mm-hmm.
They're not educated in it. And so I think there's a little bit of pushback there too. You know, you want me to start prescribing something and talking about something I know nothing about.
Right.
So there's lack of training. And then there's the stigma. So I think those things combined are really kind of what we're getting the pushback for legalization.
It's a trip, because listening to you, it just really, it's sad how much we've normalized dysfunction. You know, that it's not abnormal to be okay with taking a medication that's going to give you suicidal thoughts. I mean, the very thought of that. And then to justify it. Well, you know, it's just 10 side effects, it's not 20, you know, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but, and then how the system is, if I go in and I'm on a medication and I say, I can't sleep at night and I have dry mouth, I'm prescribed something else to now have to confront those side effects. And so in my earlier years of coming up, I worked for a chiropractor for a number of years. I loved it. And it used to baffle me when we would have clients that come in and be on 12 different medications, and half of them, they forgot why they were taking them. But they've just gotten in the habit of not feeling good, that's just their norm. And so we've normalized dysfunction, and then the systems that are in place to continue to perpetuate the problem. And so when you have common sense conversations, it's like they're looking at you like you're dumb, or are you sure that's safe? And I'm like, yeah, you know, but to unravel that thinking, and then depending on how old you are and how long that system has been ingrained in you. I mean, love the older generation, but there's some stuff that they believe and hold on to that makes
no common sense. Mm-hmm. And it's very disheartening. And I believe that is one of the reasons that there are certain conditions that have plagued certain communities. Our community in particular, the Black community, dealing with hypertension and diabetes. And then obviously the stigma of not even wanting to talk about mental health issues. Mm-hmm.
But I will say our scapegoat, which unfortunately has been weed, smoking weed, but then they criminalized it. And so knowing that was regulating a lot of people's emotions and they were balanced, you drop a dirty UA at work, you know, it's like there's your income. And then, you know, obviously we know the systemic racism dealing with all of the disproportionate amount of Black men being locked up to provide for their family, and they didn't even commit a crime. Some of them, most of them, just had weed on them. They weren't even selling it, you know. And so, and how it's criminalized for the Black community, but then it's a mental health issue for other communities, or the white community dealing with the opioid crisis. We want to call it a mental health issue, and we're going to offer services, but then just the criminalizing of the Black community. And I know that's not always the case for every particular situation. I always like to speak from balance. You know, there are people that they've earned their sentence, you know, but the majority, when we look at the statistics, is very tilted. But it goes back to just the normalizing of dysfunction. And so not being able to truly take in science-based information, people that are walking around here that have dealt with chronic illness. One, for myself, I can speak for, last year, and I love that you talked about the different receptors dealing with CBD and Crohn's disease, as I was diagnosed 17 plus years ago. And last year I had a horrible time with flare-ups, and it had been about 10 years since I had gotten this sick. And when the doctors came in and had scoped me and done everything, they literally said, we have no idea how you're walking around, period. They said, you know, based on what, they had no clue how I wasn't on pain medication, like high doses. But what they didn't know was I had learned, definitely different methods to deal with pain management. Number one, because I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition where I'm allergic to most narcotics. I can't have them. And so I had to learn, I had to find other ways to manage pain. And I remember being afraid to try CBD oil. I waited an entire year after it was introduced to me and just kept trying to educate myself, sat down with doctors, and my doctor was trying to get me to take it. My particular doctor. Now this, she was a rare breed and she's amazing. And she was like, well, you can't take anything else and we have to get the inflammation under control. And I remember like taking it and waiting. Okay, am I gonna feel like I'm floating? But it just came down to getting educated about it. And it being an ongoing issue. And I really want to be that voice for people that are former addicts and can't go back to opioids, but still deal with pain, or dealing with anxieties, but wrestle with the stigmas, and so thank you so much for unpacking that. Now, for hypertension, diabetes, are there benefits to cannabis with these conditions that have plagued our community?
Right. Well, the primary benefit there is going to be the anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
Because when you have diabetes, your body is very inflamed. With hypertension, you can have inflammation within the actual vessels. Mm-hmm. And so definitely there's going to be anti-inflammatory benefit.
Okay.
The primary thing, as being a naturopathic physician, with the hypertension and the diabetes, my primary focus on that is we got to get our diets under control.
Yes.
We got to get our diets under control and we have to start moving our body. They say
that. Yes.
Sitting is the new smoking. Wow. And people are getting heart disease, because they're sitting. We're sitting in front of the computer. We're sitting in front of the TV watching Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
And then, just the culture around the African American diet, and a lot of people feeling that if I go vegan, if I become vegetarian, I'm like abandoning my culture.
Right.
And so there's a lot of kind of undoing,
Mm-hmm.
around, what it is to be African American. You don't have to eat, greens that have been cooked in ham hocks.
Right.
To be Black, and I always tell people all things in moderation. I'll never tell a patient you can never have, your favorite soul food meal again.
Right.
We just don't need to eat that every day, and we don't need to eat it every week, right? Yeah. But it's like a treat. It's like I tell people who may have, issues with sugar. It's not that you can never have, candy again or cake. You just can't have it often,
Yeah.
and we have to start to understand that we need to be eating to live and not living to eat.
That is so good.
We have to understand that food is medicine,
Yes.
And there are definitely ways to have healthy meals that taste really good and savory as well, because that's what a lot of people are looking for, that savory, flavor. And it's completely possible. You just have to learn how to create it with healthy ingredients.
Yeah.
And so, and that is something that I also really advocate. My other passion is health for the African American community, and really advocating for better eating habits and better exercise habits. Because for most chronic conditions, right, other than autoimmune, for most chronic conditions, and even some autoimmune, we're talking about diabetes, we're talking about cancer, we're talking about heart disease, hypertension, all of that can be reversed with diet.
Okay.
And so, but it's very difficult, especially when you've grown up eating a certain way. This is how you know how to cook, and someone says you need to change your diet. What does that look like?
Right.
It is not easy. It was not easy for me, because I grew up in the household where I never ate them. Me and my dad were like, we're not eating chitlins. But my mom and my sister, they would cook them and eat them, But I grew up with the smothered pork chops and, you know, and so that's what you learn how to cook.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and even still today, just the other day on Facebook, I had posted, I went to my favorite Mediterranean restaurant, got it to go of tabbouleh and hummus and this cucumber salad. I could probably live off of that, just eat it every day. And I posted it and I said, this is giving me life in so many different, in more ways than one. And my dad responded, this is on Facebook. My dad responded, I need a steak and a potato. Which is like, it's funny, but it's the truth, you know, and for him. And I wrote back, I said, no, you don't, Dad. This meal has plenty of protein and carbohydrates. There's plenty of protein in hummus. You know, I said, there's plenty of protein here. He goes, and it needs to be USDA grade beef, you know. And you know, my dad has every chronic illness, you know, from diabetes. He has congestive heart failure. My dad has had 5 heart attacks. Okay.
Miracle.
Gout. I told him he has 9 lives, you know. And but it's all has been caused by diet and sedentary lifestyle. My dad was a truck driver by day and a couch potato by night. And just over the years of that, and he does take about 13 different medications. And it's to a point now where with that congestive heart failure, he has to take that medication. Okay. You know, and this is where I am grateful for pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical companies that create these drugs, you know, because if it weren't for them, he would not be here. You know, because he's past the point. My dad cannot eat green leafy vegetables. He can't have kale and spinach and collard greens because they have too much potassium, which interact with his blood thinner warfarin that he has to have. Because of the effects on his heart, he has to have that blood thinner.
So and now, so, like different things like pate arco and turmeric, we know that those are different herbs and Ayurvedic medicines that keep the blood thin. And even though he's at the point where he has to take, you know, medications like warfarin that keep the blood thin, is it damaging for him to eat with seasonings with turmeric? Is it bad for him to have a pate arco tea? Would that hurt him or would it help?
No, it would definitely help. However, he is not going to eat anything that has turmeric in it. He is not going to eat tabbouleh, hummus. I mean, he's really from that old school meat and potatoes. And I used to, you know, I've kind of given up that fight. You know, at this point, it's like, let me just love on my dad and that's it, you know, because he's not going to change his diet. And for those patients, you do need, you know, metformin and, you know, all these other things, because there are going to be some people who are not going to be willing to change their lifestyle. They're not going to be willing to change their diet. He's a prime example. I used to, especially when I was a student, and I used to just give suggestions and dad do this and give different herbs, honey. He's not for it. He supports me, but he's like, you know, I'm 70. Well, now he's going to be 74. He's going to be 74 this year. But, you know, I remember him telling me, I'm 70 years old. I know how to eat, you know. And it's like, what do you say to that? It's like, okay, you know.
So what do you say to people that are up in that arena and they're intentional, they're willing to take some things that even though they may need certain medications, and I'm not asking you to give like exact amounts because you need to look at labs and truly understand where somebody's at, but what are small things that they can implement to help promote health that helps their heart, helps the arteries, obviously diet-wise, but even as supplements like turmeric, drinking a pate arco tea or the supplement of it. And not, like I said, I'm not asking you to give the amount of it because you need hardcore numbers to see what you're looking at to do that. But for somebody that sees this and they're like, hey, I'm dealing with this health condition, what are simple things that I can implement in my day-to-day that's going to promote health even though I'm on this medication?
Well, one of the things that I really advocate is bitter herbs and also bitter foods like bitter melon. Is extremely helpful for diabetes. If a person, the best thing that you can really do for your heart is to increase your heart rate at least once per day for at least 30 minutes. Now, and not just going back to my dad, but he can't exercise because of the congestive heart failure where it is, right? He can't lift anything over 20 pounds. He's not supposed to, because of the stress on the heart. He has, so he can get winded very easily. So for that type of person, it's dangerous to elevate the heart rate. And that's what I try to tell people. There's like this continuum. There is a point where you can go back this way, but once you're here, there could be a point where exercise is dangerous for you. But if you're not there, the best thing you can do for your heart is to elevate your heart rate. And it doesn't have to be, I'm in the gym with, a cute workout outfit. It can be just walking, just walking. And that's the primary exercise that I do. I walk every other day, 3.6 miles. And, and as soon as, my heart rate, is double. You want to increase or double your heart rate by, at least 3 to 4 times a week. And that is going to strengthen your heart. And that will even help, maybe even bring you to a place where you don't have to be on medication, right? Because there was a point where if my dad were to start exercising, and you also, it's very important to eat foods that are low in cholesterol, that are low in fat, the things that are going to help to clog the arteries. Okay. So I always tell, because a lot of people want to know, what herbs, what can I take? And it's a very Western mindset, because we're so used to, I have this, what do I take for this? And in naturopathic medicine, you really unlearn that. And when we're looking at heart health, herbs are really the last resort that we're going to go to. The first thing we're going to do is look at diet and exercise. And most illnesses can be corrected with that alone. And because I constantly have patients, I have this, what can I take for this? No, that's not the thought process we should have. The thought process is, we first have to change our mindset, and we have to change what we're putting in our body and how we're using our body.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want to hear that because we're trained. I'm in pain, take an Advil,
Right.
It's a very Western thing. And so that's really what I advocate, is diet and exercise first for any type of heart condition, even diabetes. And so, but yes, there are different things that you can take. There's adaptogenic herbs that are really good. You want to look at our cortisol levels. Cortisol, like that stress, we got to look at stress. Black people and stress, especially right now, really forever, but, and if you're eating wrong and you're not exercising, and you're really stressed out, but, you're taking, this great cardiovascular, herb, you're not going to get the benefit.
Right.
And so that's why I just really, want to help people to change their mindset around, what do I do when I'm sick? And it's more about, what are you doing, as opposed to what you're taking. Even, for example, we look at acid reflux. With acid reflux, you go to the doctor, they're going to give you a proton pump inhibitor. One of the worst medications. It decreases the acid that your stomach produces. So what's going to happen when you eat that hamburger? It's not going to be broken down properly because you have less acid in the stomach. Yes, your reflux is gone, but now you have digestive problems because you can't break your food down properly. So with acid reflux, the main thing, again, we need to do some dietary changes, but yeah, there's some herbs like slippery elm, for example, that you can take, that's soothing to the tract, that you can take, that's going to be helpful.
Like slippery elm. Slippery elm.
Right, very soothing to the digestive tract, right?
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Absolutely. For ulcers, it's a game
Awesome.
changer for the,
Yes.
yes, love it, love it. Man, so what about the kidneys? You know, I have a couple clients that are dealing with some kidney issues. I know my mom, she's starting to deal with some kidney issues. It's, you know,
Mm.
I know for her, they're pushing fluids, you know, and a high pH water, and a couple of other things. But can kidney failure be reversed?
Well, I believe kidney failure could be reversed with stem cell therapy. Stem cell therapy is a whole other just remarkable new, it's not really new, but kind of new therapy that can reverse so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you have damage to the kidney, really in medicine, what we're doing is we're trying to just kind of prolong the life of the kidney. But the only way or evidence that I've seen as far as actually reversing true damage to any organ,
Mm-hmm.
right, is through stem cell therapy. I actually used to do stem cell therapy presentations for a medical clinic.
Okay.
And so everything from preventing knee replacements. There have been people who've gotten IV stem cell therapy who say their eyesight is better. Actually, what's his name? Mel Gibson. He took his dad out of the country to get stem cell therapy. His dad had congestive heart failure, all these other issues. He needed a hip replacement. They gave him IV stem cell therapy. He no longer needed hip replacement. I think his dad is like 90 something now. His congestive heart failure reversed.
Wow.
And so I think next to cannabis, right, the other thing that's really going to upend the medical industry is stem cell therapy.
Okay.
Right now, it's not really, it's primarily supposed to be used for helping with joint pain.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle actually had it done for his back, his excruciating back pain. He said the best thing he's ever done in his life. He can walk now. He can sleep. Wow. He can stand up straight. I've seen remarkable things with stem cell therapy. And so if I were you, I would be looking for your mom as far as reversing kidney damage, stem cell therapy.
Okay. And yes, we'll have to unpack that another time, because I know that you have a plethora of information about stem cell. And so I've just been so excited, because knowledge is power, and when people understand that there's other tools, different approaches that they can take that are more balanced so that they can truly enjoy and love their life, that's the goal. Because, I mean, there's enough that life is throwing at us. Why add on health conditions that, especially when they can be reversed or prevented?
And so that preventative health through diet, nutrition, mental health care, all of these things, that, again, it baffles me, all of the stigmas and the normalizing of dysfunction, that really, I believe a new wave of educators and people are really on board to truly break this system that has really, unfortunately, become very lucrative for people, that they have benefited off of people's pain and their suffering, and there's no part of that that's okay at all. But we as individuals, we need to be empowered and understand that we have access to more than enough information to educate ourselves. That's what it was for me, Dr. Carlie. I had my experience of pharmaceuticals, side effects, the damage, the financial blow that it was taking on my family, and went into my doctor, and he looked at me and he said, look, there's nothing much I can do, because I had got to a point where I said, I'm not going to do like your Humaras and Remicades, because my experience was so traumatic with all of the other medications. And then when I was reading all the side effects, and again, if that's somebody has chosen to take that route, that is not to condemn you, that you have your right to approach your health the way you choose to. For me in particular, I knew that it would be a life-threatening issue at the point, because I was at 98 pounds. A doctor came in, looked at me and said, if you don't do something, all of the side effect concerns I had, he said, your body's going to develop them anyways if you don't do something. And that began my journey of really branching off, educating myself on the stuff that God gave us from the earth. I said, okay, let me figure this out, because what I'd done before did not work. It was causing more damage. And so it goes back to, you have to look at your life, identify what is not working, and then ask yourself the question, why do you keep returning to it? Because we get in our habits. You know, we stay up all night, and eventually now there's migraines. And we're taking something for the migraine versus maybe I should take some magnesium or Calm, give my body what it needs so that I can address the issue, take some CBD oil appropriately, you know, get the information because that's the information that we need. And as I bring up magnesium, I was in the hospital multiple times for tachycardia. They didn't understand, you know, why I kept getting it, and wanted to put me on beta blockers. And so I'm studying beta blockers, and during my time of study, I'm like, well, let me just let me look at the heart and different nerves. And then I learned about the vagus nerve, and then how it gets ticked off when your bowels are frequently in an uproar, which is what happens with Crohn's disease. So I'm like, okay, well, what is something natural I could take? And magnesium, I've known about magnesium for years because I work for a chiropractor.
Right.
So I go to my cardiologist and I said, the tachycardia went away. The PVCs, I had horrible PVCs, I'm sorry.
Wow.
So it started with tachycardia, and then I had horrible PVCs. And I said, I just started taking magnesium. And he was like, magnesium? And I'm sitting here having a conversation with my cardiologist, amazing man, very compassionate, very empathetic. And he thanked me for doing my research.
Wow.
And he was like, you know, maybe I can get some of my clients off of these beta blockers. And we sat there, had a conversation about the vagus nerve, how it runs up and behind, you know, and but they were so excited that we found a resolution to the problem. We were able to resolve it. But again, it takes looking at your life, identifying what's not working, and then educating yourself so that you identify what other options and tools that are going to continue to promote life, which versus deteriorate it. And so, you know, it's crucial. I love what you're doing, the work that you're doing. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about your ambassador program, what it is that you do in your sphere of influence, and how you're impacting lives all across the world?
Oh.
And I say across the world because what you do, people are going to continue to impart to others. And so it's crucial that you tell your story, and you've put in the work. You've earned your badge, you know, like let's get it. So talk to us about your ambassador program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the ambassador program is just an opportunity for people to be able to invest in themselves, to be able to begin selling CBD if they're interested, and making additional income.
Okay.
And so what I love about my ambassador program is that I've incorporated education. Because I never want people to just be out there selling something, you know, because, oh, it's the hot trend, and they don't really understand what it's about. Okay. And so there's a training that goes along with it. But yeah, they're able to have your own website where you can just share your link, and you receive 15% commission off of every sale. And so, but before you do that, you do have to go through the training program. There's 4 steps, right, to become an ambassador, a Monaco ambassador. So the name of my company is Monaco Natural Health Solutions. And so you see Monaco on the actual CBD products. And so I just want, especially right now, as many people are laid off, they don't have opportunity to work from home. They may have to stay home with their children. And it looks like, I know a lot of school districts are sending out surveys. Do you want to, you know, homeschool? I have a feeling that we're going to be homeschooling in the fall, or at least a hybrid program. And so for parents who may not be able to go back to work, it's an opportunity to be able to earn money while you're at home, right? And also for practitioners. So for chiropractors, for example, psychotherapists who want to offer CBD to their clients, you can also have the opportunity to sell on shelf within your facility or within your practice and earn the same commission as well. So it's just an opportunity to educate people about CBD, to offer CBD to more people, to people's clients, in a way for people to earn additional income while they are at home, especially right now during the pandemic.
Okay. And do you have any other programs that you offer?
Let's see. I have some online courses. I have a health coaching course that I've developed online because I have experience in curriculum development, et cetera, that I work for various colleges. So I created my own curriculum for my health coaching program. Okay. And I also have a medicinal cannabis one-on-one course that's just for anyone who wants to learn more about cannabis, or maybe a physician who doesn't know how to answer questions about the endocannabinoid system. It's just a short little course that really can be completed in a day. But it's self-paced, it's all online, that goes through the terpenes, the cannabinoids, the endocannabinoid system, and a very interesting lecture on the history of cannabis as well. Okay. And so I also offer health coaching services. I'm really excited. I have a new show coming out. It's called Carlie Coaches Keisha. Oh. This is the first time I'm actually speaking about it publicly. We've actually recorded 4 episodes already. Okay. And so I'm going to start advertising for it soon. Keisha is my sister.
All right.
And so she's my older sister. And so I am her health coach. And this is a show about me coaching her through her health concerns. Wow. It's very entertaining because my sister is a trip, honey. So I think we have a hit on our hands there. So I'm working on that production. Wow. And I also have a program, a subscription box where people can order their hemp fix. It's called a hemp fix. And they get a surprise box every month with various CBD products within the box, including lotions and salves, bath bombs, bath soaps, oils. Oh, wow. And I have some non-CBD products too, like raw vegan truffles, oil pools, tooth powders, just various things. Okay. Yeah, so lots of different things going on. Of course, I'm always available to present at conferences and speak about cannabis or just holistic health, botanical medicine. So I do a lot of public speaking, mostly through the computer nowadays, but educating in that way as well. So.
Good deal. So how do you relax? I want to know, how does Dr. Carlie relax, and how do you start your morning off? What does that look like for you?
Right. So I relax one way, meditation. Okay. I start my morning off with prayer. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I start my morning off with prayer, a little bit of meditation. Another thing that's very relaxing is I walk. That is extremely relaxing for me. Because I walk by waterways and a few waterfalls. I'm lucky enough to live in a neighborhood that's very green and lush. And so there's ducks and, all of these things. And so I enjoy that 3.6 mile walk every other day. That is extremely relaxing to me. I also swim. We have a pool, so I swim almost every day. Sit in a hot tub and stretch. Stretching is just very relaxing in general. It also releases feel-good endorphins, just like exercise does. Mm-hmm. And so I think stretching is very underutilized. And so I'm a big advocate for stretching because that helps, especially people sitting in a chair like this, looking at the computer, sitting all day. You need to stretch your muscles out. It's really going to help decrease soreness and pain from just being sedentary. And so, those are some ways that I relax. I take my CBD oil every day. Okay. My favorite is the turmeric CBD because it's anti-inflammatory, because I have some gastrointestinal issues as well. Mm-hmm. And so I take my turmeric oil every day, and that helps just keep me feeling balanced with my mood, helps my stomach to feel better, and just helps me feel like here, not here or here, but just here. Yeah. And so taking my CBD oil, walking, meditating, stretching, and swimming. Those are my relaxation methods.
What about nutritionally? What do you start your day off with nutritional wise?
Water, really. Okay. This is my cup, honey. Yes, VIP.
Yes.
I was given this by attending a conference, but I fill this up. I probably drink about 4 or 5 of these a day. I put a lemon in it.
Okay.
You know, that's how I break my fast, with lemon water. So I start with water in the morning. I may have an apple and peanut butter, because if you just eat sugar or just a fruit, you really want to put a protein with that to balance it.
Okay.
So I may eat a boiled egg and grapes, or an apple and peanut butter, to have the balance of the carbohydrate and the protein, so the blood sugars remain balanced. The protein is going to help balance the blood sugar. And
That's
so that's
incredible.
what I start out the morning eating.
Wow, man. Okay. It's crucial, you know. What I hear is you start yourself with life, living food, really preparing your mind to receive, starting it with God, you know, just crucial. Um, I didn't hear one hustle and bustle, and not that we don't have those mornings, you know,
Sure.
but you know, jump up and you know, get things that are going to get you going, get you centered and focused, and pacing yourself. That it's crucial, you know, cutting the rat race, eliminating the stress so your cortisol levels can like come on down.
Mm-hmm.
and so that you can truly have a life that's responsive versus reactive. You know,
Exactly.
it's,
Yes.
man, and so it's like I said, you and I could probably literally go on, but just with stress management, you know, the importance of truly having that time to yourself in the morning, quiet, prayer, you know, and then introducing balanced nutrition. I tell my clients all the time, your gut and all this is our internal garden, and what you give it first thing in the morning, your body's going to crave all day, you know. And so it's crucial that you give it the good bacterias, that yummy, where your body's like, thank you,
Yes.
so that you're not fighting your body all day to
Right.
get through a meeting. And it's there's no fun in it. So for those of you that are listening, preventative health is crucial. If you don't have any known issues right now, I highly encourage that you develop or learn to break the habits of you know, putting stuff in your body that's not producing good bacterias, that are inflammatory. You know, it's crucial. It's man, I can't stress that enough, that you live now for the future versus waiting for something to occur. And then, I mean, the work of it is intense, and millions of people are doing it, you know, that have been diagnosed with certain conditions, and they've made tremendous lifestyle changes, and they're reaping the benefits of it. But if that's not you, if you don't have a diagnosis or something that you're not fighting, you know, start taking care of yourself now for the future. And so you have given us a plethora of information. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your investment in educating yourself and making yourself available to come on our Loving Your Life podcast to really unpack so much. And for our audience, we will definitely have Dr. Carlie back with us, continuing to educate on so many different alternatives to healing and health and wholeness. And so I want to thank you again so much for your time investing in us today.
Oh, thank you, Crystal.
It
Thank
was a
you so
true
much
investment.
yes, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for giving me a platform to talk about what I'm so passionate about, because the thing that I guess I left off that I'm most passionate about is helping people feel better.
Yes.
And so I know there's a lot of people out there that are sick, that are hurting, or like you said, that may have habits that will lead to them being sick, or potentially lead to them being in chronic pain. So I love the idea of let's be preventative, right? I'm all about preventative medicine. And so I just appreciate the platform. I appreciate what you're doing and helping people to love their life and to love themselves just abundantly and wholeheartedly. And I'd love to come.
Uh-oh, breaking up here.
And I just wish you many blessings. You are definitely a service to our community. And I just thank you very much for having me. And I've enjoyed being here today.
Thank you. Can you tell our audience real quick before we go where they can find you?
Sure, drcarlie.com, C-A-R-L-I-E. Oh, I guess it's right there on the screen. Yep, drcarlie.com. No period though between the doctor and Carlie, just drcarlie.com, and you'll be able to find everything there. If you're interested in CBD, you can click on the CBD tab. Oh, and I also have health questionnaires. Health questionnaires for body systems. You go to drcarlie.com. If you click on Monaco, it'll take you to my Monaco Natural Health site, and there you will be able to you can pick from 12 different questionnaires, everything from pet health, child health, reproductive, cardiovascular, and they're free. They're free questionnaires, and you will get diet, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations from those questionnaires. And so lots of resources there on the website, and so check me out.
Thank you so much for all the great, rich information, and we look forward to having you back with us again.
Thank you, Crystal. Have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.